Welcome to the Following the Joy podcast with me, Debbie Westwell, confidence and mindset coach and massive travel enthusiast. This podcast is a place to talk about being the best version of yourself, following your heart, making scary changes and having fun on this adventure that we call life. I'm your biggest cheerleader and I want you to know that it is never too late to start over and make a life you are excited to get out of bed for. So let's go and get following the joy. In this episode, I am talking to Deborah Lovejoy, who is she used to be a mental health nurse in the NHS. She's now got her own business with her daughter, Be You Wellbeing, and she shares with us the story of how she experienced massive burnout from working hard, from people pleasing, how she ended up being diagnosed with ME, and her recovery journey from that. She shares some hints and tips on how to kind of be cautious about yourself and use her as a cautionary tale as to not to burn out. And she also hosts retreats, which is super interesting. So this is like a feel-good cautionary tale of just how to look after yourself and give yourself some self-care. So hope you enjoy. Hi, Deborah. Welcome to the Following the Joy podcast. I am so happy that you've agreed to be a guest today. So thank you ever so much for that.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. All right. So for our lovely listeners, just introduce yourself to them and share who you are.
Okay. So hello, lovely listeners. My name is Deborah Lovejoy. I am an ex-mental health nurse and CBT therapist. And currently, I am a transformational coach. I'm newly retrained in transformational coaching. I run women's retreats. I'm the founder of my own business, Be You Wellbeing, which is kind of a wellbeing consultancy firm. And I've now this year started running small groups as well. So I'm running cacao, sharing circles, creative groups, all the kind of stuff we do at the retreats, but in small, like 2 or 3 hours, so that it's more inclusive for more people. My whole ethos really is about building community and spreading well-being. And my mission really is well-being for all. I mean, that's a very broad umbrella, well-being, but basically it's about spreading the love.
Wow. I love that. I'm all about spreading the love and joy as well. And everybody needs a bit of well-being in their life, regardless of whether they think they're a well-rounded, normal, not stressed individual or not. Everybody needs some love and well-being. So
Exactly.
How long were you a mental health nurse for?
So I was a mental health nurse for 14 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And before that, I worked in mental health. I was a manager in a mental health day centre. And previous to that, I was a volunteer at that centre. And I got the deputy management job and then got the management job. And then I decided I wanted to do a degree because I was like, I can't really go any further with this. So I did a degree in psychology while being a single mom, working part-time. And so, I mean, that was hard. That was hard.
I can imagine.
Talk about managing stress and handling stress.
And juggling so many things as we do as females in our natural lives, don't we? I mean, I think everybody listening, you could probably list now at least 5 to 10 things that you're currently juggling in your life between work, family, commitments, driving people places, things that you've got to do, shopping lists. There's always things to do and lists and stuff to juggle, isn't there? So
Exactly.
All right. So when you worked in mental health, was it like younger people? Was it adults? Was it a broad spectrum of people? How does it work?
When I first started nursing, I worked in a community mental health team and I worked with a whole array of people from low mood and some anxiety, sort of panic attacks or feeling panicky, all the way through to full-on psychosis. Serious mental illness like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. And then I started working as a nurse in a specialist team for people with psychosis. I was working then with younger people because we worked from 14 until 30 something. And the reason that it was those numbers is because that's when most people had their first episode. And that's what we were working with, first episode of psychosis. And I very much became drawn to not necessarily just working with the young people, but working with the whole family. So working in that systemic way and really realizing that mental health, mental well-being, serious mental illness, all of that was affected by so many things. There was a perfect storm that created psychosis in a person. It wasn't just one thing.
Yeah.
Uh, and that kind of like, I'm just thinking about that now, that sort of really rings true with the wellbeing stuff that I'm doing now. I mean, it's such a broad umbrella. There are so many aspects of our wellbeing. They've all got to be broken spokes of the umbrella to create the psychosis, the same with other illnesses and the same with other mental health issues.
I mean, wow, it must have been quite a stressful, but also rewarding job, I guess, when you're helping people. But obviously I think you shared with me previously, like you kind of burnt out a little bit doing that job, didn't you? We had a bit of a conversation about the
Yes.
NHS, and I'm on my soapbox. I have an issue with the NHS because I feel like people get into the NHS because they're caring, kind individuals who want to help people and make a change. And actually, as you get into the NHS, you're overworked. There's too many people that need serving. There's too few staff. There's lots of time that needs covering. Everybody's on sick and stress. The pay isn't the best in the world for, like what you do type of things. But are you happy to share kind of like how you burnt out and like your story?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a mental health nurse working in the NHS, plodding my way up the system, doing well. Lots of training inside that, which I really benefited from in my life as well as being a mental health nurse. So I came out of that as a trained CBT therapist as well. And I didn't want to become a manager because I could see that the management position had changed so much. So they weren't managing a team. I would have loved to have led a team in the early days. I would have loved that. And I would have been in my element at leading a team. And I know that I would have the skills to do that. What my problem was that management position had turned into being ticking boxes, into being about systems and being about getting the paperwork done and nagging everyone to get their paperwork done. And it just felt like, do you know what? That's not the job I want to do. What I like doing is sitting in a little room with somebody and having a conversation with them and watching them have those light bulb moments. Or sometimes when I go and knock at somebody's door for the first time and they open the door and they say, "Oh, thank goodness it's you." They just kind of, it's human connection, it's not about for me. And so I just was like, I can't go any further inside the NHS. I feel stuck. So I thought, what else can I do? I can train, maybe I can do some teaching because I love to teach. I love the group sessions. I really enjoy the group sessions with people. Started to get into that. And again, dead end. Went into the CBT therapist. So CBT for complex cases. And it was so stressful. That was one of the most stressful things I've ever done. And I failed that course.
Oh, wow.
Which was a massive stressor for me because it was over 2 years. I felt I let my whole team down by not being there, doing this amazing course over there and then failing it. I felt like I'd failed. I just failed and I felt that. And it was a huge wallop.
Yeah. It just makes you feel like you're not good enough or like you said, I think the most important thing, like I'm letting people down. How often in our life do we judge ourselves based on how we perceive what we're giving to others? So like I've let my family down because I've been working too hard, or I've let my colleagues down because I've been over here studying. I've let myself down because I didn't pass, what I studied type of thing. And sometimes we just need to go a little bit easier on ourselves and be like, do you know what? Did anybody die? No. Okay, that's fine. But
and I was still helping people every day. People were still writing me those lovely letters at the end of me working with them. And, that to me, that was my joy. That was the bit that kept me doing what I was doing. That, and as I said to you before, a good dollop of people pleasing, good dollop of trying to prove to my mum, who's sadly died now, but still trying to prove to the soul of the spirit of my mum that I'm good enough, doing what I'm doing or following. It was kind of going to university and training and doing all of that was more her dream than mine. I actually didn't know what to do.
And again, how many times do people just do that? Because that's what you're told from a little girl, your caretakers, whoever they are, be them your parents, guardians, whoever, like your teachers, tell you what they think you can and cannot do as a child. And as a child, your brain isn't developed enough to question that. And so you go, okay, you're telling me, for me, for example, I got told at the age of 5, I can't sing. Now, I think I can carry a tune. I just have never had training. If I had training, I probably could sing. It's not like I'm tone deaf. But all my life I've gone, I can't sing. Now, that's just a real basic example.
Yeah.
But like what you were saying there is your mum's like, you must go to university, or at schools, you must pass this exam. You must take this path. You must please people.
Yeah.
And that is basically a core belief that we have
growing
up. But actually, a belief isn't a fact. A belief, I say this on every episode almost, like a belief, the word belief has got lie in the middle of it. It's got the word lie in the middle of it. It is not a fact. And we can change our beliefs.
I love that.
Yeah. Think of all the things that you believed when you were little. Santa, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy. Do we believe them now? I mean, I do. But, like...
in different ways.
So we've proved to ourselves already that we can change a belief. And it just sometimes takes a little bit longer.
Yeah.
We've got to understand that we have those beliefs in the first place. And obviously you do now because you've already articulated it. But, probably going through the university, you're thinking, I'm trying to please my parents. And I've done exactly the same. Like, when I wanted to start a business and I've come home and said to my mum, right, this is my plan. And she's like, well, you should probably be really cautious about that because X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe I won't do that. Maybe I'll stay in the job that I'm not happy in at the moment because that's actually what you're telling me is the best thing to do. Get your pension, work hard. But she's only telling me from her experience what she has learned from her parents who learnt it from their parents and their experience. And don't forget, my grandparents were in the war. So they came through that whole, like, if you've got a job, hold on to it because you don't know where your next food's coming from. Everything's like in scarcity and in lack. And so, we can break those cycles, but we have to understand them in the first place. Yeah. So it's quite scary. Okay. So you were, I went off on a tangent then. Sorry. Sorry, Deborah.
It's juicy stuff, isn't it?
So you basically were kind of like getting to the point where you're like, oh, I don't enjoy this anymore. I only really like the small bits that I get to do with the people. And that's ultimately like what I do, but I've got all of this paperwork and stuff to do.
I was supervising younger and new people coming into the team, and they were full of your energy, really idealistic, and I was just cynical and negative. And I kept saying, don't listen to me. Stop giving me people to have under my wings because I'm just going to break them. It's like, I'm just going to like fill them with all my cynicism. But at the same time, it was a joy and a pleasure to watch people full of passion about the job again. Yeah. And that really made me see, I just don't have it. I just don't have it anymore. I can't do the teaching. I failed at the CBT therapist stuff. What I did was I trained myself in CBT therapy and I passed the course, and I did that after I failed that one just to prove to myself that I could do this, Yeah. So pushing myself so hard for so long to try and find my path. And this is all this is just the work part of the stress I was experiencing. Life is going on outside of work. There was a lot of other stuff as well alongside it. My mum dying, different relationships ending because once again, I was putting myself in people-pleasing situations and not getting my needs met. And on and on it went.
And also raising a daughter as well.
2 daughters. Yeah. Raising 2 daughters. And most of the stresses that their lives then brought as well. So there was a lot of stress and it was just piling on and piling on. And as a mental health nurse, I used to do this exercise with people called the stress bucket, where you would draw out a bucket and you would fill that bucket with all the different stresses and, show people that actually when the stress all leaks out of the top and explodes out of the top, that is when the breakdown happens.
That makes sense.
And what you could do to help yourself and support yourself is you put taps on the bucket. And those taps might be speaking to a friend. It might be medication. It might be meditation, whatever it is. Fixing the problem, because sometimes you can fix a stressor. And that obviously then relieves the pressure in the bucket. There we go. And a friend of mine laughed and she said, "Oh, bet your stress bucket's full up." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, do you know what? I've never done one to myself." And I just realized in doing my own, I mean, I was laughing the whole way through it because I was like, I'm so stressed out. And it had been so normal to live with that level of stress that I didn't recognize it. I just didn't recognize it. And here I am teaching everyone else how to deal with their stress. And I'm full of it myself.
The irony of the situation, right?
The irony of the situation. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was that your turning point? Like that was your like, right, this is it. I am done.
What happened? I mean, I was feeling that, but I was still plodding away at it. Whenever I spoke to my other half about it, he's like, "Stick at it, darling. When the shit hits the fan, just keep plodding, keep plodding. Life isn't great all the time. Sometimes you just got to push through." And I was like, yeah, I mean, he is right. Sometimes you have got to do that. And I don't think it was really out and out people pleasing. I think it's sort of like peer pressure in a way. Sort of, I could read other people's expectations of me, and I didn't want to disappoint people. And also, what would I do? What else would I do? I'd been searching for other things and couldn't find it. So what happened was I started getting ill, and I started getting more and more ill. I started having, I don't know, even things like backache, like serious backache. And I'd take a lot of time off for backache. And then that would pass. And then I'd have viruses back to back to back. And that would pass. And then I fell over dancing in my high heels and cracked my kneecap and my foot, one on one leg and one on the other. The universe was trying to slow me down, was trying to stop me. And I was still fighting the fight that I'd been fighting all my life, since being a young child, fighting. So, yeah. And eventually I decided I would take some time out. I'd have a 2-month time out, and that would just give me a rest, give me a break. I'd already cut my hours down at work. So I was having a lot of pressure from work. They were putting a lot of pressure on me. You're letting the team down because you're not a team player, because you keep
the guilt.
Yeah. Seriously.
And then your colleagues were probably like, "Oh, when are you coming back? We really miss you. You're really good at your job." And so that puts more guilt on as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was fighting that. And I was talking a lot about self-compassion and well-being then. And I became a well-being lead in my team because I was like, no, I'm standing up and saying, we need more well-being in this team. This is unhealthy. We can't carry on like this. Teaching people about self-compassion. I was already doing that inside the team and then doing that for myself. The more I did that for myself, the more the NHS, not the NHS, but the team I was in and the management at that point were saying, "You're not a team player anymore. You're not struggling like the rest of us. You're not just swallowing your stress like the rest of us. You're actually saying I'm worth more than this." And that makes us feel really uncomfortable, So body getting more and more ill, took 2 months off. In that 2 months, I was ill the whole time.
Yep. How many times has that happened, To? How many times, for everybody listening, have you booked a holiday or half term and suddenly you're getting ill because it's like your body's like, okay, got to cope. Oh, look, I can see this window of time where I can just let go and then let go.
I'm no longer running on adrenaline. Because that's what it is, isn't it? You're running on adrenaline, and that's the burnout. It's like the adrenals are literally burning out. And then the moment you stop, it all falls apart, or you get ill, or whatever it is. So 2 months off, I was really ill. And what happened in that 2 months was I cracked a tooth. I had to have the tooth pulled out because it had fallen apart. The filling came out, and blah, blah, blah. And that was when I was in Italy. And so I had to go to an Italian doctor. The whole thing was high stress. And virus after virus. So I was ill. Every time I got better, I got another one. And then I developed shingles. And after the shingles, that was it. I never got better. I just felt ill all the time. And I could, and I went to and it was like constant going to the doctors. I was having palpitations. I was dizzy. I was feeling sick. I was having headaches, like blinding headaches. Temperature dysregulation. I was freezing cold and couldn't get warm. And then I was having hot flushes and thinking, oh, probably in the menopause, and all this sort of stuff. And it was the heart stuff, I think, that was freaking me out. Also, I was having like vibrations through my body, like really strange symptoms, really, really odd. Sore throats, constant sore throats that didn't really turn into anything. Couldn't sleep at night. I was wide awake. I was knackered all day, really exhausted, like just wanted to sleep. Would go to bed and be wide awake and felt like I was laying there all night. And then I started thinking, this is like really weird. I'm going to start what I would always say to people, don't Google your symptoms, but I Googled my symptoms. And I came up with possibility of having ME, chronic fatigue syndrome. And so I looked into that and thought more and more, do you know what? I think I do have this. And it's only once I got my diagnosis of ME, CFS, which took a year of really pushing. I had to really push inside the NHS again to get that diagnosis. Once I had that diagnosis, I suddenly realized I think I've had very mild ME CFS since I was 16 and I had glandular fever.
And it's just been simmering away. And the more stressed you get, the more it develops a little bit. And then you're just kind of feeding into, not that it's a disease, but like you kind of feeding into it. So the less you're sleeping, the more stressed you're getting, like the less that your body's functioning properly. That's when it starts to kind of develop itself and then show itself even more. Yeah. Wow.
I was exercising because I was so stressed. I thought exercise is really good for stress. So I was exercising. I was doing yoga once or twice a week, actually going to yoga sessions once or twice a week, doing yoga at home. I had a personal trainer who I just loved, and I would like box and do all sorts and like really go for it. I was super fit. And I thought I was helping my body by doing that. And actually, it's very common in people who develop ME/CFS to have been really hardcore exerciser.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There's something again about that level of exercise, what it does to your body. Especially when you're
exercise is not healthy for you, people.
Not pushing yourself like that. And actually, I didn't think I was pushing myself. I thought having a personal trainer once a week and going to 2 lots of yoga, that's perfectly fine. But actually, for me, that was putting my body again under a lot of strain. My body was screaming out to stop. It was just like, stop.
It probably is a perfectly fine amount of exercise for somebody who is sleeping well, eating well, isn't feeling stressed, so without all of those other symptoms, it's probably the perfect amount of exercise for someone.
Yeah. So I'll go back to that term of the perfect storm. So I literally had perfect storm of all of the stressors that then created ME, chronic fatigue syndromes. So as soon as I realized that, I said to myself, right, if a perfect storm's created it, then it will take a perfect storm to uncreate it. I've got to work back. I've got to reverse engineer this. And that's when I started really getting into all things well-being. And that's when I would just spend, and because I was bedbound, sofa-bound, housebound for a good year. 2 years, because then COVID struck.
Oh, goodness.
A lot of laying down. There was a lot of laying down. I was listening to podcasts. I was listening to audiobooks. I was listening to beautiful music because that's all I could do. And meditating. That was it. That was my life for 2 years.
Wow. How old were you, if you don't mind me asking?
I've been ill for 5 years. Say ill. I've had this condition for 5 years. So that was, 5 years ago.
And obviously you've changed your life now. Are you still experiencing those ME symptoms?
So, I consider myself probably 80, 90% healed.
Oh,
And I
good.
call it healed, not recovered, because I don't know, recovery means lots of different things to lots of different people. And I'm not sure yet, I don't know, and neither does anyone else really, that you can recover from ME/CFS.
Yeah.
But when I was told I had ME/CFS, I was told again by the NHS that we haven't got anything for you, you're on your own with this, and you probably won't recover. That's it. Bye. We will send you to the ME/CFS clinic. They run a group. But by that point, I'd already learned everything I possibly could about ME/CFS, how to handle it. I was attacking it with the same sort of, like vigor and passion that I attacked everything in my life, but from laying down on my bed.
Goodness.
Learn all about well-being and then I started applying it as I could, But the first thing was meditation. That for me was a huge, huge part. Meditation and mindfulness, learning to be present rather than escaping, because that's how I felt I'd lived all of my life, escaping from the now, escaping from my feelings, escaping. And actually the way I would escape is I would escape up into my thinking.
Yeah.
So escaping
You're
up
not escaping at all then, are you?
escaping up into my thinking and it was busy in my head, really busy.
And your brain is a good storyteller. It, kind of fills in the gaps with something that, it thinks should be there. It's not exactly, we'll come back to those facts again. It's like, let's look at it like a legal situation. You can't take something to court if there's no like founding evidence against it. And in our brains just whiz around at like 1,000 miles an hour, filling in the gaps of all the stories, and you're having arguments with people in your head that you've never even spoken to them about, or a certain situation is going to finish this way because that's the story that your brain's told you. And then when you get to that situation in real life, it never plays out how your brain has told you it's going to play out. There's always something different.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So for anybody listening who maybe not has that extreme of ME, but is thinking, oh, I'm ticking those boxes. I'm not sleeping at night. I'm feeling stressed at work. I feel like I'm letting people down. I'm putting pressure on myself. I'm tired. I'm getting those headaches. I'm starting to kind of go down that path of my body doesn't feel 100%. What advice would you give them? It's a bit of a broad question.
Oh, I mean, there's never just one answer when it comes to health. So try your GP. You may or may not have luck. I mean, the thing about ME/CFS is that you get the diagnosis once they've crossed everything else out.
Yeah.
So you have to go through the whole gamut of being referred to all the different specialists to have all of the other things crossed out. And once they've all been crossed out, then they say, okay, it's likely that you have ME/CFS. And then you get sent to the ME/CFS clinic and then they diagnose you. So if it was that, but if it's simply a case of burning out, feeling exhausted, for women kind of might be of our sort of my age, could be menopause. So check that too. Rest. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Listen to your body. I mean, I am the cautionary tale, right? I did not listen to my body, and look where it got me. Right? Totally bedbound, housebound. I'm still picking up the pieces of the illness. Like I say, I reckon I'm like 80, 90% healed. And it's been a real healing journey. I've had to do a lot of work to get me here. I wouldn't have been able to do this, like sit in a chair and speak to a screen and speak to someone, because the light, the stimulation was too much. It had to be quiet, dark room. So anyway, advice to people: get checked out physically first. If you're not getting help from there, rest. Slow down. I think that was one of the hugest things, my hugest lesson. I mean, I'm a speedy person. I always have been. I like doing things quickly. I was rewarded by my parents for being quick. Do it quickly. We haven't got time. Do it quickly. And I definitely passed that on to my children. Sorry, girls. But although actually, I love my youngest for this. She'd say, "Mom, shut up! Stop! Slow down, Mom." And I'd be like, yes, you're right. Thank you. Thank you. So she was a real, thank you for fighting me. Thank you for saying no to me, for having some assertiveness.
So, Deborah, where are you at now? So obviously you're 89% healed, which is great. And you no longer work for the NHS. And actually you work with your daughter, don't you?
I do work with my daughter. So my youngest, the one who bossed me about, she also is a mental health nurse, and she had her own physical health issues. And so she left. She was like, "You can leave, I can leave too, Mum." And I was, that's what you need to do. That's what you need to do. And she's now super happy working in a very small school. They only have like 9 pupils or something like that. And she like, yes, and they all love her. She's seriously happy. And so she works, we do it all over Zoom together. So I'll start at the beginning. So my thinking was, okay, I'm no longer working as a nurse in the NHS. What can I do with my time? Because the more well I got, the more time I actually was able to do, and doing has also been a bit of a saving grace for me. Like when you're very, very unwell and you need to lay on the sofa or lay in bed in quiet, that's what you need. But actually at some point for me, I needed something to do. I needed meaning again in my life. I needed purpose, structure. All of those things were super important and part of my healing also. So developing a business that I could run from home, that I could run when I was well, that I didn't feel like I was letting people down if I had to cancel or change appointments or things like that. I had no idea what that's going to look like. At the beginning, I had no idea. And slowly, things have just come to me. Things have happened. And then I did training as a transformational coach, and that was also life-changing. Training as a transformational coach for me taught me so much about personal boundaries, about values, beliefs, my limitations. I smashed them all out of the park through that training. Absolutely wonderful. I was coached, hours and hours of coaching I've had, which has been amazing. And now I'm in this world of coaching and I just love it. I love it. I feel like this is what I was born to do. This is what I was born to do. Everything I've done in the past has led me to this.
I feel exactly the same. And also like use me as a cautionary tale, because I have my own stories that I've shared previously about burning out and things like that. So it's like every experience that you've had in your life has led you to this point.
Yeah.
And actually, how can you help others? And it's such a wonderful thing being able to help others and know that they're not going to have such a harsh journey as you had yourself, type of thing. It's such a wonderful thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, learning from experience is one of the ways of really concreting it. Yeah. But if you can learn from somebody else, do it. Do it. If somebody else can teach you something and save you years of suffering, then blooming go for it.
And I just think the Americans always had it right. I think British people, I mean, I've got a mixture of audience here anyway, but British people were predominantly like, oh, why have the Americans all got like counselors and psychologists and therapists and coaches? Whereas now it feels like the British side of things is catching up. And actually, if you're listening to this and your attitude is this, why would I go to a coach? But you're thinking, well, everything's free and I found it on social media or I can find it on the internet anyway. My question to you would be, well, why haven't you done something about it then? I mean, there might be people listening that have done something about it. But actually a coach kind of helps you, keeps you on like track, kind of holds you accountable, but also just holds a safe space for you to have those complete meltdown moments and understands what you're going through when sometimes your friends don't, or your family don't, or you're receiving those pressures from external forces like work, family, friends going, you should do this, you should fit into this box and have this job and stay here. And even like your husband with his best intentions, he was saying to you, just suck it up and keep going, because that's what we've been taught to do and that's what you should do. So if anyone's listening, coaching is awesome, but you just got to find a person who you resonate with. But you do coaching, but you also do retreats as well, don't you?
Yeah. So when I was thinking, what can I do next? One of the things was my other half, he runs holiday rentals, properties, and he has this beautiful, great big barn that he's done up, and it's just stunning inside. And I was thinking, now, what can I do with all of my skills as a mental health nurse, a wellbeing practitioner, a CBT therapist, and use a space? And it just came to me. I can run a retreat. This was just during COVID. I was thinking about it. And what happened was I was out of bed and I was having a good time, and it was my birthday coming up. And I thought, instead of throwing the massive fancy dress party that I would usually throw for like 100 or 200 people in the barn, I would use the barn and invite some girlfriends over, and we'd put our pajamas on, and we wouldn't have any alcohol. We'd drink hot chocolate or turmeric tea or something. And we'd go to bed early. We'd watch a film on the big screen, and we'd just be cozy, have a sleepover in the barn. And it was wonderful. And we got our oracle cards out. It was just so good. And I realized at that point that connection was super, super important. I absolutely love my other half. But 2 years imprisoned with him was with the occasional other person coming to visit. And then, of course, during COVID, they couldn't. So it really kind of like intensified those feelings and made me really realize that connection was important. And connection with women, I realized, was just medicine for my soul. And after that night, after one night and next day, I felt energized more than I had in the last 2 years. And I thought, right, this is medicine for me. And this is what a lot of women are needing right now. We're needing connection. And that is what started me organizing a retreat. So I organized the first one for my girlfriends. Said to them, look, if you come and you pay, for some food and for this, I'll put everything else in. And I found people who wanted to come and run groups and do things.
Amazing.
We had a sound therapist. We had a creative writer. We made flower mandalas. I taught people the psychoeducation stuff that I'd learned as a nurse and through my own wellbeing journey. And they loved it. And again, watching the transformation from people arrive on the Friday, frazzled, exhausted. A lot of them arrived late because they were just juggling too many balls and, couldn't kind of like keep themselves together enough to arrive on time. And it was just like, oh my God, look at you all. Look at what happens in the world. I mean, because by this point, I'd been out of it for 2 years and I was in my own sort of like fluffy zone. Totally meditated, totally zen, and watch people arrive on the Friday like frazzled as anything.
Yeah.
And by Sunday, they were all lit up. Their eyes were shining. They were excited to go back into their lives. And that was just 6 of us in the bars doing what we were doing. So we've been doing that now, myself and my daughter, for the last 3 years. We're just coming up to our 6th retreat, and we've got more people signed up for it than ever before, and more people from a much broader area. I don't even know how some of the people have found us. It's, one lady Googled us and found us on Google. So I'm super happy about that, because that means that we're doing something right.
Yeah.
In
That's
terms
awesome.
of and I absolutely love it. And it's a women's wellbeing retreat, but really it is a transformational retreat. You come in on the Friday frazzled and maybe anxious or low confidence or not so assertive. And by the end of it, they're all flouncing out as gorgeous goddesses, full of all of the vibe, power. I mean, so in their power, it's incredible. And so that was kind of the next thing. Then I trained as a coach, because I was like, what else can I add? What else can I add to the retreats? And that's when I did the transformational coaching.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Fantastic.
That sounds fabulous. And it just goes to show that even somebody who's been in like that mental health career, like you have for so long, like you can make that change. And again, anybody who's listening who is kind of feeling frustrated, fed up, stressed out, burnt out, like people pleasing at work or in your home life, but at work, I want you to know that you can make a change. It doesn't have to get as bad as like Deborah got or as I got, where I was signed off work with stress. You know, it can get to the point where you make the decision and make a plan to leave or change or, you know, learn to love your job, but basically give yourself a better life. And it's really interesting about kind of putting those boundaries in place and saying no and things like that, because as soon as you start doing it, it feels really scary, but you do it and it's literally, there's like a light switch has been flicked and you start to notice the good things that are coming at you, because it's like you are now respecting yourself enough to say no, put yourself first. And then suddenly the world respects you and you are living to perceived boundaries that you have put in place yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I do feel very gifted. I feel, like I was saying to you before, this illness for me has been a gift. And it's horrible as well. And I do still have days of suffering and I do still have moments of suffering. And I can appreciate everything that this illness is, the position that it's put me in. You know, what I think I've done cleverly, I'm going to blow my own trumpet, is I've looked at all the resources I have available to me and gone, right, what can I do with that?
yeah.
You know, and I think one of my strengths is I'm recognizing is that I'm really adaptable. I will adapt and be successful in that, whatever is thrown at me. So that's one of the lovely things that I can then pass on to other people.
Yeah. And I love that. Oh, Deborah, tell people where people can find you.
Okay. So the name of my business is Be You Wellbeing. We are on Facebook as Be You Wellbeing. There is another lady as a Be You Wellbeing. So my suggestion is to have a look on Instagram at Be You Wellbeing. For some reason, they're not on there. Or go to the website, and our website is beyouwellbeing.co.uk.
I put all these links in the show notes anyway, so people can just click on it.
Yeah. And our email is beyouwellbeing@outlook.com. So any of those, come and find us. If people go to the website, they can see all of the different things that we do, get to know myself and my daughter a bit more. And then the links are there to go to Facebook and Instagram and all of that sort of stuff as well. So it's a lot easier to go through.
Beautiful.
You can also subscribe to the website, and people who subscribe will get first dibs on offers and anything else that comes out for free.
Well, Deborah, it's been wonderful having you. Now, before you go, I'm going to kind of just do the key takeaways from this. And I think obviously, as always, there's been some absolute gold that's come out. So the first thing is think back to what Deborah was saying about the stress bucket, and maybe just take time now yourselves, if you're listening, to think about how many stresses that you do have in your life and imagine them filling that bucket. Because if your list goes and the likelihood is your bucket is probably quite full, and we don't want it to get to that overwhelm point. And so then obviously the second part of that is try and see what you can do as the taps to release some of the pressure. So be that a little bit of self-care, be that like removing a stressor, like you said, or just talking to somebody, taking that first step and talking to somebody and saying, even if it's just a friend, I feel really overwhelmed and stressed, or I'm not sleeping, or whatever it is. Yeah. So that would be one. Number two would be try to recognize the signs that the universe is showing you that you need to stop. So sometimes these come through as some form of an illness, maybe a tickly cough, but then it becomes more persistent. It turns to a virus, and then it's continual viruses. Don't let it get to that bit where it literally lays you up like a broken ankle or ME or whatever it is. Try not to let it get to that point, because 100% once you've got to that point, you will be like us and making those massive decisions, but you can empower yourself to make those decisions in your life without getting to that point. So just start to notice if there has been a pattern emerging of you not being in your greatest of health. Most importantly, number three, rest and slow down. The world will keep spinning. Nobody's going to die if you just take a rest, because sometimes when your brain is so active and full, it can't even go to full capacity. So you know, when you can't work at full capacity, you can't do everything that you want to do. And sometimes you just need to stop, slow down, rest, and then reassess the situation again. And you're coming at it with a fresh brain. And then finally,
Can I just interject?
Yeah.
Really importantly, when you get on an aeroplane, they always say to you, put your oxygen mask on first. You cannot save anybody else's lives or help anybody else until you are safe yourself. And that is huge. Fill your own cup first and not your stress bucket. Get that down. Fill your cup.
Yes.
Fill your cup with love. That's what you need. You need a love cup. That's the opposite of the stress bucket.
I love that. All righty. And then finally, number 4, gift yourself self-care, whether that's a retreat, whether that's 10 minutes with a cup of tea in your garden and nobody talking to you, whether that's a bath in the afternoon. I very much like baths in the afternoon, whether that is just a little bit of meditation, whatever it is, gift yourself that, because it will be one of the best gifts that you ever give to yourself. So hopefully this episode has made you think. Deborah, you have been absolutely fabulous. Thank you ever so much for joining us today and for, being vulnerable and sharing your story as well as a learning curve for other people. So yeah, thank you ever so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. And I hope even if that just helps, one snippet of that helps one person, then we've done our job, haven't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. And as always, any links or anything mentioned will be in the show notes. If you haven't connected with me already, I'd love to meet you. So come find me on Instagram at Debbie Westwell. You can always slide into my DMs and let me know what you thought about this episode. Or why not join my Facebook community, the Alchemy of Self-Care free community. You can also find out how to work with me at debbiewestwell.com. If you like what you hear, then please follow me or hit the bell icon. Share with somebody like you who would benefit from listening. And if you have time, then leave me a positive review and that would be fabulous. Thank you for being your wonderful self, and I can't wait to chat next time.